to the Sprinklr Coffee Club. I'm Marshall Kirkpatrick, your host of the Sprinklr Coffee Club. Thank you so much for joining us today. You don't have to drink coffee here in the afternoon if you're watching the Sprinklr Coffee Club live, but I do recommend it. It's not obligatory, it is recommended. I've got an incredible cup of coffee here in front of me right now. And it is gonna help get the old brain moving, which is gonna really come in handy over the next 30 minutes of action-packed, fast conversation with a wonderful guest that I am so excited to have on the show. Our guest this week was the founder of the world's first pure play social media consultancy, the Social Media Group. She later went on to lead marketing at the giant firm SAP with incredible success, and is now sharing her wisdom as a coach to CEOs and startups around the world. And here with us today, I am so pleased to introduce Maggie Fox.
Hey, Marshall, how are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound fantastic. Good. You've got your coffee. That's great. If you're drinking coffee with us live in the audience today, thank you for joining us. I want to welcome you to post comments or questions in the YouTube right-hand sidebar. And if they're good questions, we'll fold them into our conversation here over the next 30 minutes. I love coffee. Maggie, I'm so excited to hear about the lessons you've learned from the incredible trailblazing work that you have done over the years. I wonder, let's start with Social Media Group. Can you tell us a little bit about what it was and what it was like to start it?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, thank you for your kind words, Marshall with 2 L's. It's lovely to be here. We've known each other for a long time, so it's super nice to come on your show and have a chance to chat with you and speak to people, because it's been a little while.
It has been. We have known each other for quite a while. My wife sends her regards, in fact.
Oh, good. Michelina, hello. What can I say? In 2006, I was in a meeting and I went, hey, and someone said, hey, using at the time blogs to talk to their customers. This is an interesting thing. And I thought, I know a lot about social media. I've been playing with it for quite a few years. I think there's something here. There's an opportunity to help businesses kind of figure this out. So, 2006 was the germination of it. By 2007, we had a international contract with Ford Motor Company. And it was kind of like this little agency was the dog that caught the ice cream truck, as I like to say. And, in terms of the things I learned, I learned what I don't know, right? Which is I didn't have a lot of agency experience. And although we were able to grow to a multi-million-dollar business with, 24 people and did a lot of really important work and took companies like Ford from no capabilities to winning awards, we never were able to actually scale. I wasn't, as a CEO, able to scale with the business and help it grow. And so that's something that, of course, you look back on now, you think, oh, if only I'd had a better, if I'd had a board, if I'd gotten investors, if I'd gotten more expertise into the business earlier to help us really take advantage of this first mover opportunity, things would have been really different. But instead, I feel like we made something awesome. I got to work with great people. We did terrific work. And I also learned a lot about what not to do next time.
Yeah, that's great. Well, they say that there are in one model at least 3 types of company builders: the pioneers, the settlers, and the city planners. That's a model that's resonated well with me. And it sounds like you were really out there pioneering, and that's an essential part of the evolution of the whole industry.
Well, when I look back, we were Outbrain's first client. We were among the first cohort of clients for Twitter promoted tweets. We were in there early on all of these early platforms and got an opportunity to both learn a ton from them and actually, I like to think, help a lot of these businesses grow themselves by, giving them money, by helping them learn as we learned ourselves. Talk about a ringside seat for one of the most important evolutions in the history of communications, really, in many respects, like Gutenberg and social media. You know, TV's in there somewhere too. But it's been incredible. And, you know, it's funny. It feels, in many ways, it feels so far away now. Like I can remember a time, Marshall, when the business first started, I was able to read every single thing that happened in social media in a week. And that was kind of our marketing, which at the time was just marketing, but now, of course, we call thought leadership marketing, where I, as an individual, you know, founder, CEO at that time with a very small team, I would go through and read everything that everyone was doing in social media and write blog posts about it. Like, can you imagine a time? Can you imagine a time when there's that little happening, that one person in the course of a week can cover all the major developments? So that's how early we were, and it
That's
was.
amazing.
Yeah, it was a terrific ride. And I mean, the people I got to work with on our team, the people we were able to bring into the business, the people we worked with at clients, folks like Scott Monty, you know, and others all over, you know, I have no regrets. I definitely have things that, you know, obviously I wish we'd been able to grow to $100 million business, to be the biggest in the world, blah, 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 as you see many people are able to do. But that's okay. We were there early. We learned a lot and we shared a lot.
So, given that ringside seat that you had, what are some things that stand out in your mind that have changed substantially, and what has stayed the same?
Yeah, so in terms of what's changed, I mean, obviously the pervasiveness of it. Like there were many years when we would have to sit in front of boards. I would go and present to a board and say, this social media thing, it's kind of a big deal. You should probably pay attention to it. Here's some statistics about how people are using social. Like Pew's Research Institute was just my Bible, right? In terms of the ever increasing number of people using these platforms. So you'd have to go in to executives and try to convince them that this was something they should pay attention to. And of course now, fast forward 13 years, I guess, almost 14 years, and it's air. And I remember Charlene Lee talked about that, right? Talked about, you know, social media will eventually become like air. And I would argue that we're at that point. I can also say that, you know, I look at some of the ways for evil in which social media has been used for evil. And I think we were very idealistic in early days that it was going to really democratize, you know, communication with companies. It was going to democratize, even, you know, make politics more transparent. It was going to allow the average person's voice to be heard. And then, of course, that did become a conduit for people taking advantage of that and manipulating it, and through very sophisticated methods, gaming the system. And I don't think any of us, you know, I'm sure many people did, but at the time that was not something in our cohort that really people talked about. That, okay, wait a second, there were no like, hey, wait a minute, should we really be thinking about sort of the longer term implications of that? And in some respects, actually, after the 2016 election in the United States and all of the interference there, I actually wrote a post on LinkedIn where I sort of said, I'm sorry, like I had no idea. This was, as an early pioneer, I feel a level of responsibility for what ended up happening here, right? Which we really were not, I think we were very idealistic and did not anticipate the ways it could be used for evil.
Well, there have been a lot of good things that have come out of it as well, right? I mean, it's been absolutely incredible. But to your point, there was probably some naivete that hopefully we won't repeat with the rise of subsequent platforms. I think about the author, Ken Wilber, has a line where he says, the solution to every problem includes the seeds of the next problem.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think, you know, Facebook being a classic example, right? That they chose to go the route of a traditional ad model for revenue, right? Eyeballs. The same as display advertising, right? And in an individual, a different platform, obviously highly targeted, lots of data that makes it more powerful, etc. Well, the unfortunate reality is that that economic driver is really in conflict with restricting the number of people that may use the platform, for good or bad, right? That it's forced them to kind of take this impartial perspective that it's just a platform and it has no social contract. And that is very challenging, right? That's very challenging. It's one thing when you make $10 million a year, but when you're making billions a year, it's extremely powerful. So I mean, it's becoming so interesting in terms of how into the fabric of society. Many of these platforms have become have they become the lifeblood, the ecosystem of our communication networks and how we talk to each other, how we learn things, and just to see then you could argue one way or the other. Is there a moral duty that is kind of that people are kind of walking away from because it conflicts with their economic model? So anyway, I like to think about things like that because it is very challenging, and I'm sure there are lots of diverse viewpoints on it. But man, has the world changed in the last 13 years? That's for sure.
Speaking of the communication powers of social media, if you happen to be participating live on the show and have any questions or thoughts that you would like to share with Maggie and I, we'll respond to your questions. So Maggie, you saw with your brave troop of early pioneers in the industry, you saw some of the first rumblings that became huge world-changing businesses, but you also then went on to have an important leadership role in one of those very large world-changing businesses as well. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So in 2013, I decided to exit our business. It was time. Things had changed. We had initially had this first mover advantage that really displaced a lot of incumbent agencies, but because of our challenges around growth and just getting bigger and getting our hooks in there, we sort of started to see that advantage erode, right? And at the end of the day, it was a services business, it's like you win one, you lose one, you win one, you lose one. So at any rate, 2013, I decided it is time to wind this business down. The opportunity to move on and do other exciting things is really appealing. And plus, it's just hard, right? Like, it's really, really hard to be a founder. And I know that in my bones, having done it for 7 years. So it is tough. And I was lucky in that I had this wonderful opportunity presented to me by a client that I worked with for many years, including redesigning their marketing team and to better optimize for digital, doing a lot of really important strategic work inside SAP. So SAP, the CMO of SAP, a good friend of mine named Jonathan Becker, came to me and said, hey, the digital marketing team, it's not really functioning like I'd like it to function. Can you come and fix it? And so I thought, you know what? And he made me an offer, frankly, I couldn't refuse. I thought, you know what? This sounds like a great change. This sounds like a great opportunity to do something really different. And I knew full well that the success rate for going from entrepreneur, small business to 80,000 people, senior executive, one of the top 200 executives in the company, those transitions typically do not work. But I don't care. I thought, this sounds fun. This sounds like a lot of fun. I'm going to give it a chance. And I love these people. I know them well. It's a great culture. It's a great company. It's still, I have a lot of fondness for SAP. They were really great to me, and it's a terrific culture. So anyhow, so that's what I did. I went to SAP with the sort of first mandate of reorganizing the digital marketing team globally. Within a couple of weeks, the board of directors said, okay, we have these major transformation projects that we're undertaking. There are 5. One of them is we ended up calling it the One Digital Experience Transformation Project, and it was the modernization of the customer experience pre-sale, and which I guess is prospective customer experience. And so the board of directors said, Maggie Fox, you're in charge of digital. This project is now yours. And I kind of went, oh, okay, no problem. And I will say that I had a few people inside the organization that had been there for a while come to me and say, you're new here. You don't understand how hard this is going to be. It's been tried before. It's impossible. And I'm the kind of person where, like, you might as well hand me an engraved invitation. Like, that is like telling me that it can't be done. Thank you very much. You have just guaranteed it will be done. So we got to work. And I was able to assemble from my own team as well as cross-functional teams. We got about 200 people inside the company together, and we started mapping out the project and what it was that we wanted to do, what we needed to do. And essentially, we really needed to help the organization, and we needed to retool technology, and we needed to help the organization understand that 2/3 of the customer decision journey happens before someone calls you, even in a high-stakes B2B sale. And so you need to figure that out, because you're not going to be on the consideration list and you won't even know why. You won't even know there was a consideration list. So really helping the organization understand the importance of digital and all of that. Obviously, the first stop for most people is Google. And And then looking at the legacy system, the legacy organization, this massive technology that was really sedimentary, that year after year after year, people had built things on top of other things, and we had to completely replatform. So at the end of the day, with the help of a terrific group of people, the project lead was a guy by the name of Matt Johnson, who I would hire again tomorrow. He's just amazing. He's still at SAP. He was sort of the day-to-day project lead. We put this team together, this team of ninjas. Also Peter Ryle, who was our communications guy, was terrific. And we put this team of ninjas together, and we got to work. And the biggest thing we did was not the technology change, not the, we did get the organization to start moving much more quickly from a waterfall to an agile model. We were able to completely replatform in about 30 months, as well as change the company's perspective around the importance of digital and the role of digital, even in these massive enterprise sales. But the reason that we were able to do that fundamentally was culture. That we started really setting expectations about this is how you get things done in a big company, right? So even though I'd come from a small place, my own company was only about 25 people, the reality is we were then walking into global organizations and getting people to change what they did. And so we've been doing that for 7 years, and this was no different, right? It was really helping people move their own cheese, to kind of steal, a book title and to modify it. And that was culture setting. And one of the biggest things, which was very interesting, and I think was one of the keys to our success, is that we told everyone they had to assume the best intentions. That when you had to walk into, because we only controlled maybe 20 to 30% of the spend and the activity, we had to get the other 70, 80% to change on their own and listen to us and do what we said, basically. The conversation we had at the beginning of every meeting was assume the best intentions. That if you need to change something, if you need something to be different, and you need to convince someone else to do that, what you need to do is walk into their office and sit down and not assume they're going to fight you. Because if you walk in like this, that's what you're going to get back. You need to walk in and assume that they just don't understand, and that we all want the same thing, which is the success of the company, and that what you simply need to do is take the time to explain to them the rationale, the plan, the vision, the motivation for this great big idea of the thing that you're doing. And we found that worked like a charm. Like, it was extraordinary how that started to open doors, and we started to create momentum. And I will say that after about 2 years, I can remember sitting on an update call, because we did these big company-wide update calls. We're very transparent. We did these big company-wide update calls. I remember sitting on the call thinking, my team does not need me anymore. This group of people are running this so well, and it's got such momentum, and people are so on board that I don't need to be here. Like, I could disappear off this call and this would continue on, which as a leader, personally, you're doing your job, right? That's when you know you're doing a good job. So anyway, that long story, but it was absolutely one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. And I look back on that and that team with a huge amount of pride.
Oh, that's beautiful. That's a beautiful story. Are there other, that's a keeper too, that lesson learned about the role of culture and presuming the best intent. It brings to mind a Brene Brown quote, not from her, but I saw her say similarly that her husband likes to say, I don't know if everyone is acting with their best intentions, but my life goes better when I assume that they are.
Exactly. Exactly. And it takes a little longer, right? Like, it does take longer to explain things to people and take time. But at the end of the day, you have an ally, as opposed to someone, maybe if you're lucky, is indifferent, right? And so I found that was really about 90% of my job, was explaining to people, running interference with other senior executives, going, hey, let me explain, and this is how it's going to work. You're going to get what you need, etc. And which was fine. I mean, it was my job. Like, that was what I was supposed to do. And I do definitely look back on that with a lot of pride. I think we did a lot of great work. And and the project was a success. And it was one of those big, huge enterprise projects that could sink under its own weight. And it did not. We delivered. So they really do. Yeah.
So are there any other lessons from that experience that come readily to mind that you might share?
So I have, all right. So I want to share this we only have 10 minutes left. The time goes so quickly. I'm going to share with you my personal leadership philosophy. And I can say this now because I've made the decision to no longer go back into the enterprise. And when I was in the enterprise, when I sort of was a CMO, et cetera, because I went on to do roles like that after SAP, I never wanted to share this publicly because I thought, well, this will be the last job I ever have if I do. And now I'm lucky to be in a position where I actually don't really care. So here it is. As a leader, I think your biggest skill is learning how to be lazy. And it comes from a quote, which is a legitimate quote. If I'd taken the time, I would have looked it up for you, but maybe we can do that in the highlights. A military leader, a French military leader, he said, people have 4 different characteristics, and each one of us has 2. There are lazy people, there are intelligent people, there are stupid people, and there are industrious people. So everyone has some combination of these 4 characteristics. So stupid and lazy people, and I know these are not nice words, but his words, not mine. Stupid and lazy people can be put to work, right? They can peel potatoes, they can get things done. You know, you can just give them focus and they'll do the things they need to do and they'll get them done. And then you have industrious and intelligent people, and they are terrific because they will take the work and they will get it done. They will make sure it happens. They will put the hours in they need to, and they'll do it in an intelligent way. So they really are productive. They get things done. And then you have the best people of all, who are the lazy and intelligent people, because they don't want to do any more work than they have to do. And so they are terrific leaders because and I'm not saying I'm a terrific leader, but I'm saying this is my philosophy. I'm working on it. They don't want to do too much work, so they're always going to find shortcuts towards more efficiency. They delegate, and they're intelligent enough to be able to look at a situation and realize it's going to cause more work. They have to solve it. And then, of course, the most dangerous of all are the stupid and industrious, because they will just get on a line and not stop, no matter how useless the work is that they're doing. So my goal always is and I share this philosophy often with CEOs that I work with, is that you really want to focus on being lazy and intelligent. You're already intelligent. You need to learn how to be lazy, because you got to get out of the way. And I can honestly say, as a senior leader, I ran a team of 500. We had a 50 million euro budget. That's as big as many companies are. My job largely was to get problems out of the way and then get myself out of the way and let people do the really good work and sort of, set focus and so on, but just get out of the way and let them do their awesome stuff. So that would be if I could do a TED Talk, that would be my TED Talk, the importance of being lazy. But I think that's one of the key things. And honestly, I can see it's been proven right again and again and again, that when you can get out of the way as a leader and let people do their good work, you just watch you can't imagine the scale, right? All of a sudden you've got this group of people with huge ownership, a huge sense of ability to accomplish things, and they know they're supported, and you just let them go. And that's when true leadership comes into play. So.
Amazing. That's great. If any of you smart, industrious people out there watching live, before you refocus yourself towards being lazy, if you'd like to be industrious enough to ask a question here in the YouTube interface, please feel free to do so, and we'll see if Maggie has some thoughts about it. That's amazing. Can you give me an example of what that looks like to be a smart, lazy leader?
When people come to you and say, we've got this problem, what should we do? And you look at them and you go, what do you think we should do? And then they typically have an idea. And if they don't, that's fine. Brainstorm it. Let's talk about what we should do. But really removing yourself from being the answer to all the questions, right? And this is often a really difficult transition for people who've been really strongly personally recognized for their work, right? So let's say you're at a senior manager, director level, moving up to VP. That's typically where that happens in most large companies, or even smaller companies too. So you're used to people saying, hey, Elaine, that work you did was amazing. You have done such a great job. Now you're leading perhaps 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 people, and you are no longer personally recognized for your good work. And you have to make that transition of getting a sense of accomplishment, a sense of fulfillment from when your people are recognized for their work. And that transition is very difficult, and sometimes people can't make it because they need to get in there. They need to get in there and be a part of the solution, and all they're doing is slowing things down because they become the bottleneck, right? They're only one person. So it's that sense of empowerment, just getting out of the way, letting people, with the right support, right? And obviously with a level of accountability, but getting out of the way and letting people do the work themselves. And not have to be a part of every answer. And so that is, I've often seen repeatedly again and again over my years of experience, that is the point that a lot of people just can't make the transition to being truly transformational leaders, where they really can empower people to do this terrific work they never thought possible.
Wonderful. Wow. Well,
yeah. I'm pretty passionate about all this. Very passionate about all of this.
That's awesome. Well, I appreciate it. I'm going to go home and give that some long, hard thought myself. So are those the kinds of things that you are now doing with the founders that you're working as a coach with?
Yeah, absolutely. And so the space that I work in is with first-time founder CEOs of high growth companies. So they're typically growing 400 or 1,000% a year, maybe a little bit less. But they're hitting the 8, 10, 15 million ARR mark. And maybe they're fairly young, right? They're 27, they're 32. They may not have worked anywhere else, or certainly not anywhere else at a senior level. And so if they want to scale with that business, if they want to be along for the ride, there's a lot of stuff they have to learn about how it's different when there are 4 of you and when there are 50 or 60 or 70 of you. And so that's the sweet spot that I just love working in, because it's like a distillation of all the great rewarding stuff I've been able to do over the course of my career. And that's all I do, right? I don't have to do the administrivia and the other stuff. Really what I'm focused on is helping these terrific, brilliant entrepreneurs scale and be their most awesome selves and keep up with their business, stay with the business. Don't get pushed out by the board later because you don't have the experience. Invest in yourself now. And so watching the coachability and sort of the appetite for this transformation in their own styles it's just amazing to watch. Like I feel a huge amount of personal satisfaction for me being able to help some of these really great people be even better. Like they're already great, but to really kind of take it to the next level. So that is the place that I have made the decision earlier this year to spend all my time. So it's been awesome. I'm really
that's incredible.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Having gone down that route, I wish I would have given you a call when I was in situation, but here we are. It turns out, speaking of enterprising folks out there in the world, we've got a question from the audience. Eric, will you let us know what the question is? This, Maggie, is our question. Maggie, what was it that made you not want to go back to the enterprise and work in CMO level or equivalent roles?
Yeah, it's a great question, Eric. And the answer is kind of twofold. So I've been a CMO twice since leaving SAP. And I love the work. I love the teams. I love getting people to put on a play in the barn. Like, we've got some work to do, let's go do it. But what I don't love, and it really came down to personal reasons, what I don't love is getting on a plane to go to work every week, right? Which, being based in Canada, was my reality. And I just didn't want to do that anymore. And I also realized that we in Canada, in particular in the startup scene, are in a really interesting moment in time. There are a lot of companies, there's a lot of growth, job growth in Canada in the startup space is greater than San Francisco, for example, last year. And so I really thought this could be a great opportunity for me to take all of this global experience and come back into this market and work with folks who maybe haven't had a chance to see the scale that I've had a chance to see. And so that was really it. And you know what? I'm able to, right? Like I was just lucky enough to be able to, at this point in my career, make that decision that I just don't want to do that anymore. It's hard work. I'm lazy.
What was that little Canadian pearl of wisdom there about Canada and the startups?
Yeah, it's I've got a link to it, not handy, but I'm happy to share it with you afterwards. The Canadian startup space, and there are obviously definitions of startups, created more jobs, I think about 18,000, more jobs than San Francisco did. So a lot of it's centered around AI. Canada is a really strong hub for AI through the University of Toronto and also Montreal. And we're just at a moment in time. Like we've got some great examples that everybody knows, like Shopify. And there are a lot of terrific startups that are really in the scale-up space, and we've never quite been there before to have this number. And we have a challenge in that we don't always have a great supply chain of senior leadership because the size of our economy, right? We're small but mighty. As someone once called us America's, I had a friend who called us America's hat. And I was like, okay, you're America's pant. You're Canada's pants. That's fine. But you know, it's just an interesting moment in time. Anyway, I can share that detail with you later in a link. There was an article that was.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
I, for one, will, as they say, welcome our Canadian AI overlords. If AI, as AI thrives, may much of its leadership come from Canada.
Yeah, it's an interesting time.
Canadian leadership. Maggie, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing with us these stories and insights and lessons learned. I feel smarter than I did a half an hour ago, and I can't wait to go back and rewatch this episode with another cup of coffee and a notebook by my side.
Well, thanks, Marshall. You were already smart, so I can't imagine how smart you are now. And I'm sure it has nothing to do with me, but it's been a delight chatting with you. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you. And thanks, everyone, for watching this week's episode of the Sprinklr Coffee Club. I hope that you will like our YouTube channel so that you can subscribe to future episodes and join us here as a part of the Coffee Club community ongoing. I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day.